Welcome to Uncontained, episode 186. I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and on the show today, I speak with a filmmaker and CEO of Gratwick Productions, Kris Hulbert. Kris is a man that's on a mission to change the way Hollywood does things. That's right. He's sick of the Hollywood model of filmmaking. We talk about his fully transparent, ethical, and audience-owned studio, Gratwick Productions, and how you can become one of the audience owners as well. On Kickstarter and GoFundMe, it's a donation. With Kris and Gratwick, it's actually an investment. You own a certain percentage. They're backed by the SEC. We'll talk more about that as we go on and into the show. I don't need to throw it all at you right up front, but I just want to give you the idea of what he's up to. Looking to start something that he would want to have as a filmmaker for other filmmakers and people in the entertainment industry. We'll jump into that. Make sure you check out the show notes because I will have links to GratwickProductions.com, which will bring you to the Start Engine page where you can actually invest in Gratwick. And also, please check out UncontainedPod.com. You can listen to the show right there and also get links to the various podcast players out there. iTunes, CastBox, Stitcher, you name it. Uncontained is probably on it. So please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. And holiday season is fast approaching. And that Amazon banner at the top of the page is great for people to click on and help support the show with no extra cost to them. And get all those Christmas presents delivered the next day like Amazon Prime does. So enough of the sales pitch. Let's get to the show. I have Kris Hulbert on the show, so plug in those earbuds. This is how Kris lives uncontained. On the show today, I have the CEO of Gratwick Films and also a podcaster. This is Kris Hulbert. How are you doing today, Kris, and welcome to the show.
I'm doing pretty good, Aaron, but I think I identify myself most as a filmmaker.
More as a filmmaker, okay.
Everything else is just a necessity just to get back on set.
All right. It's good to make yourself diverse, though. You know, the more tools you have in your bag, the more useful you are, right?
Yeah. It's been an evolution, but storytelling is kind of at the core of kind of how I identify myself and all of that. The business side just is the necessity to be able to do it again, to keep telling stories.
Right on. So, got a hold of you, or you got a hold of me. Whichever way it worked.
We've circled orbits for a few years now.
Yeah, we've talked a while and like things didn't line up, and that's a lesson you got to keep going after. Like if you want to guess, you got to try again, because sometimes they're busy, sometimes you're busy or out of the country like I just was. But you have something really cool going on. I mentioned Gratwick Films, and it's a film industry kind of unlike or kind of the antithesis to Hollywood in a way. Would you agree with that, or how would you sum up Gratwick?
Yeah, anti-Hollywood is probably the easiest and simplest way there. What it really is a transparent audience and artist-owned studio system. And it's really based on using a lot of emerging technologies that are coming out, like blockchain and cryptocurrency, and the ability to actually kind of create your own digital distribution platform and sell your content directly to your audience. But at the same time, the marketing and distribution are major points of access for the entertainment industry. I can make as good as a film as I could possibly make, but if I don't control the marketing and distribution, it's still vulnerable to not making its money back. It's still vulnerable to a lot of misfortunes that bestow people on the back end of films in the release phase. So until you can control that entire pipeline, you're always going to be at somebody else's mercy on whether or not you're able to pay your investors back and move on. So it just became about, we need to build this for ourselves to exist, so we can control our own pipeline, make the content we want to make, tell the stories we want to tell, and get it to our audience. And if we need it to exist, there's got to be other artists like us that need it to exist. And it just became from there, building a model big enough that as many people as possible can benefit from it.
Cool, man. So I was reading over your Start engine page. Is that what the link
Yeah,
is?
yeah, yeah.
It's like
There's
a
the
GoFundMe or something like that, correct?
Not exactly. So like GoFundMe, Kickstarter, and all of that, there's no accountability built into that. You're kind of begging for money. It's the digital shaking a can on the internet. I give you $20, you give me a T-shirt, and hopefully you do what you say you're going to do with the money. But campaigns like Start Engine, WeFunder, stuff like that, these are actually SEC regulated public offerings where
Really?
somebody can invest as little as $100 and they get shares, actual shares and ownership in the company, the same as if they invested through the stock market. It's still a private company, whereas the companies that are on the stock market have fully gone public. This is a new method for investing and raising funding for startups and small businesses that actually went into effect. I believe it was in 2009 or 2016. The law finally went into effect and opened up this new source for funding.
Okay, cool. So I hear you saying investing a lot. So it's different than just a donation.
Yeah, this is 100% shareholder. So we had just it took us about 2 years and quite a bit of large investments from our friends and family in the company just to get through the SEC regulation approval process to be able to do one of these offerings. So we are under all sorts of restrictions and rules and compliance through the SEC on this offering. So, for example, I can tell you that you can invest as little as $100 into the company, but I can't tell you the specific share price and how many shares you'll get for that $100 because that information is on the offering page, and I can't share the detailed specifics of it. People have to look at the offering page and see that information for themselves.
Okay, and is that what's on the? Well, I'll share the link that you sent me in the show notes. Is that all on there?
Yeah, GratwickProductions.com reroutes you directly to the Start Engine page. So that's just the easiest one to remember is
Okay.
GratwickProductions.com. And that takes people right to the Start Engine page and the entire offering, what the company's doing, what the value is at this point, and what the roadmap is for the company is all laid out there on the investment page.
Okay, now as I said, I read over the Start Engine page, and I saw some really cool stuff on there, like some things that benefits for the people who actually buy shares of Gratwick. What are some of those? I know they range from like watching auditions or something like that to.
So we
I'll let you take it.
we call it a minimum investment in Gratwick joining our A list, and the Gratwick A list stands for artists, audience, and accountability, and that's kind of all wrapped up into what the company is. So when you invest in the company, it's not just sit back and watch what happens and hope we make your money back. We actually want the investors' influence. We want them to be a part of the experience in real time of the entire creative process. So they're going to help us decide what projects get greenlit, who gets cast, and what charities each one of these projects give back to through a totally transparent creative process that has live streamed auditions, live stream production set. So at the end of each production set, the goal is so when a film is being produced, these creators are going to know when their film's being released before they go into production, which is a really big thing because Hollywood has that advantage on the marketing side. They know when the next Batman movie is going to be released 3 years in advance, and
Yeah.
everybody's talking about it. A filmmaker's lucky if they know 2-3 weeks in advance when their film's going to be dropped on VOD. How can you promote and market that? So by working with our own studio system, we can set a date in the calendar and work backwards from that on when it's going to be released, which gives you more freedoms during the production process. You're live streaming auditions and you're live streaming your production set. All of that stuff becomes commercials and sales funnels for, hey, the movie's coming out at such and such a date. Get your tickets now. Get a collector's DVD. And then each day ends with a wrap-up show where you have a host that talks to the cinematographer, the director, the lead actor, the person running craft services. Each day it's a different member of the production team, and the audience can sit in and watch that kind of like The Talking Dead, but they can ask questions. Hey, I saw the cinematographer setting up this weird camera angle earlier today. What was that for? Why did they do that?
Very
And
cool.
yeah, and people are getting an emotional attachment to the project all the way through, and not just the project itself, but the creators, the PAs, the assistant director, the talent. All of these people are getting a new exposure for their personal brands and their work ethic, and an audience that follows them from project to project. And then on the back end, how many people are now super excited and interested to see this film that they've been watching kind of all come together and piece together, but they want to see the final project that they've been following this entire time. So it's just taking the creative process and making it a mutually beneficial experience for the audience, who are our investors, and the creators, who need a ethical source for their finance, marketing, and distribution. We just combine it all together, provide it to them at a lower rate than the establishment's going to do, and we don't prey on them in the process, and everybody wins.
That's mighty nice of you. That doesn't sound like Hollywood, does it?
It's just what I want as a filmmaker. So we're trying to give that to everybody else as well.
Nice. So I guess like how much like control or input or I guess we could put it feedback does the investor have? Because it seems like on the website you're like they have feedback and kind of input like on casting and stuff like that, or
Yeah,
if they mainly just get to watch it.
So it's a great question, because the most important thing here is the creator has ultimate say and control over their project. The studio works for the creator doesn't work for the studio. And why that's important is because we're not talking about if your project gets produced by Gratwick, then it's mob rule on the investors. If the investors decide that it's a popularity contest for the actors, that's who your lead actor is. No, it doesn't work like that.
Okay.
What it is through the Gratwick app and the tools that'll be provided to each investor, they'll have the opportunity to provide their feedback and their thoughts, their opinions at each stage of the process. And all of that information will be taken, collaborated, and considered along with statistical analysis of that information. So if I'm a director and I'm going through the audition process and there's two actors that I'm 50-50 on. I really like this one for certain reasons. I really like that one for certain reasons. But then I look at the audience feedback that have been sitting in on my auditions, and I see that 80% of them are in favor of this one over the other one. That's going to be a big influence on me as a director. That's going to tip the scales in their favor. Same thing with each kind of different stage along the creative process. They're not going to have, again, mob rule, but they're going to have enough access and ability to give their thoughts and opinions that creators that actually care what the consensus is are going to take that information in and allow it to marinate with the rest of the thought process that they're doing on their projects.
Okay, so in a way, it almost sounds like you're constantly like screen testing things.
That's a great example of it. Is the audience gets to sit in on that entire process and give their feedback and almost serve as the test audience all the way through the process.
Nice. And one other thing I like saw that was really intrigued me because, well, there's like it sounds like you're open for submission of content creators, of people who invest in the company.
Absolutely, that's another big perk of being a member of the A list is not only so if you're a content creator, if you're a crew person, if you're an actor, if you're anyone that's in the industry, owning a piece of your own studio should come with intangible benefits and perks. One of those is insider access and firsthand knowledge of any jobs and career opportunities. If you're a writer or a producer, as long as you're a shareholder, you have an open door to submit your project at any point in time. And the way that this entire corporation is ultimately going to evolve into and work out is we're looking to establish digital media funds in each different community and region around the country, where each community can invest in their own local digital media fund, and that media fund finances artists and productions happening in that region of the country. So It's the community investing in their own artists. And the way those projects are going to be qualified is as long as you've invested at least $100 into your community digital media fund, you have the right to submit your projects for potential production and financing through the project. The deciding panel of whether or not a project qualifies for funding is going to be determined by a committee of 9 people from that community. So they're going to decide whether it's ready or not. It's not up to them to decide the business side of it, just whether or not it's ready for production. And then from there, after it's been decided that this project is ready for production, it'll have a cost analysis and a projections report attached to it, and then it'll be made available to all the investors in that community digital media fund to review and give their feedback on it. Then that information will be compiled and deliver to the board of directors for the digital media fund to make the decision on what projects are going to be funded next in the production slate. So the audience is involved and the investors are involved in that entire process. And if you own a piece of the company, you get to submit your work and have an opportunity for it to be produced.
Now, does it matter the weight of how much you own? Does a person with like the $100 share or 50 of those $100 shares the same weight in getting something produced?
That's an awesome, great question. Nobody's asked that yet, and I've specifically created only one tier package for the investments into Gratwick. Anything over $100, you're on the Gratwick A list.
Okay.
There's no class system, there's no tier system, there's no additional perks for investing more into Gratwick. We're going to work just as hard for our $100 investment as we are for a larger investment. The only difference is you're going to be you'll have more shares to get a higher return of the profit sharing. But my hope, so we were actually back and forth on this, on capping the investment at $100 for a minimum and a maximum, so we
Okay.
could have as many people involved as possible. But that was a little too altruist, where we didn't have enough marketing power in this early stage to limit ourselves in that type of capacity. But that's the goal, is that anyone that owns a piece of the company, they're all equal as a member of the company. Your dividend check might be bigger.
Okay, all right. So it all comes down to the payout at the end, not the benefits you get as a creator or
Nope.
as somebody whose your opinion weighs.
As far as the engagement or the interaction between shareholders, between each other and between the company, only the shareholder will know how much they have invested into the company. Nobody else will know any kind of levels, tiers, or anything else, other than this is a fellow Gratwick A-lister that has supported the company.
Okay, all right, cool. And now you have something set up for people who want to submit their content to be produced and made into a film, see if it's ready or whatnot. Do you have like something in line for people who want to be in front of the camera or even behind the camera? Like, say somebody wants to be a camera guy or a grip or do some voiceover stuff or just act in a feature.
As a shareholder, any opportunity for employment or a gig that's being offered through Gratwick will first be offered to our community. And if the solution and the person can't be found in the community, then it'll be posted as a public offering and a public opportunity for anyone to submit to and apply to. But our goal is, whenever possible, to give the work to our team, our shareholders, our people that are part of helping make the company exist. This is a coalition for all of us to have a studio that provides us all opportunities to work more, pursue our creative goals, and not be preyed on in the process.
All right, man. Like you have your film aspect, but reading through your page, I noticed there's a lot of esports aspect to it. Where how do the two relate, or is it just two kind of separate entities?
Oh,
Or
see, there's a ton of crossover there, and initially, not a lot of people see it off the top, but once you start scratching the surface, it's amazing how much the two blend together. But before we dive specifically in that, I want to make it clear that Gratwick Productions it exists to support digital media content. So it's not just feature films, or it's not TV shows or anything. It could be music, it can be books, it can be augmented reality experiences, video games, VR experiences. Anything that can be a digital good is something Gratwick is interested in supporting and helping bring to fruition. But esports,
podcasts?
podcast, absolutely, as well. You probably don't want Gratwick promoting your podcast right now, because we don't even promote our own. We just put it out there and focus on everything else.
Fair enough.
But yeah, anything that's a digital good and has value to an audience, we want to at least have an option to be involved in supporting it and helping it grow. But esports specifically is a personal passion of mine. So like the last we stopped doing it because EA Sports is just a horrible company. But for like 5, 6 years, we ran a Madden football league for dads and adults and all of that. And it was a great release when people weren't fighting over the terrible programming, but like the community atmosphere of it and running the league and all of that was something I really enjoyed and loved. And it was at that point, kind of doing it, that I saw where the future of esports could go, and where a digital Madden league surrounded by all of this kind of satirical content and fake reporters and all this type of stuff could bring a digital league to life. And I started realizing, as a filmmaker, having an audience that watches like video game tournaments and sports leagues and all of this different stuff that would be like, I don't know, the Gratwick Madden League. That's a captured audience to show movie trailers to, commercials for the next book that's coming out underneath the company, the next song or movie. All of these different things cross pollinate each other perfectly. And then in addition to that, the stars and the creators, every studio creates their own stars. So
Yeah.
there's a beautiful opportunity with esports to cross pollinate the stars. So the names and the big draws from esports, you can do documentaries on them, you can do interviews, you can have them as cameos in creative content. And then on the flip side, when you've got a new movie coming out or a new show or something you're trying to promote, you can have these actors be special celebrity guests and participants in esports tournaments. You get a knockout prize if you knock out the lead actor from our next movie that's coming out. So there's
Okay.
a ton of crossover potential between all of that. So it just was a natural evolution that has snowballed in my hometown of Buffalo, New York, where we're looking to build a production facility, a studio, and an entire interactive entertainment complex. That the esports arena is the driving force to get all of that done, because there's so much attention and popularity happening with esports that's the thing everybody knows who can be successful
Yeah.
and draw the attention and the attraction to the facility. The studio part of it, people aren't so sure of will it work, where's all the business going to come from in that, until we start explaining them the layers of the digital media funds. Now, when you have a digital media fund in the community of Western New York, any of the projects that get funded, they've now got a studio that they can go to, get that project made, have all the support of the same thing a Hollywood star would have. They're making their movie out there. They've got a marketing team. They've got a distribution strategy right from the outset. They've got a full service production studio that they're working with. And all of these things are servicing them and their project versus the creator just being happy that the studio said, yes, you can make your film. Now here's how we're going to manipulate your story and have it serve our agenda.
Okay. So, all right. So, so that explains your hometown being Buffalo. Explains why that you're building in Buffalo. That was going to be one of my questions for you, because it was either Buffalo or Niagara, and I was like, huh, he's in L.A. Why?
Oh,
Why?
it's a perfect storm of opportunity there. So we've got to prove the model works in a first community, so we can roll it out and bring it across the country to other underserved entertainment communities. So Buffalo, we've got the ground support, we've got the family, we've got the friends, and most importantly, there's a perfect storm of local, state, and federal tax credits, like the Opportunity Zone credit and Startup New
Oh,
York. All of
nice.
these things that come together to create a real estate boom that's happening in that region right now, that makes the real estate part, the whole facility, a key component on creating enough momentum to reach a tipping point with all of this, that it can really explode in a big way.
Right on. Yeah. So I guess it's a lot easier to start something like this in Buffalo than the way property prices are in LA,
Yeah, yeah.
and and stuff like that makes sense.
There's a lot of
Or
abandoned buildings
anywhere
in
in
Buffalo.
California. Oh, are there? I
Yeah,
haven't ever made it to Buffalo. I've been to New York City once, but or twice actually, but never up to Buffalo. So,
it's an interesting
um,
corner of the world.
okay, all right, I might have to check it out sometime once you get this this building up, this multimedia plaza.
The esports arena is going to have two live stream studios, so you'll have to swing by and do a remote show from the facility.
That would be awesome. That'd be awesome. Live from Buffalo and Gratwick Films. We could definitely make that happen. So, um, now I was going somewhere, but I came to a lull here. I have to edit this part out as I think about it.
No worries.
But but I had one more question before I was going to move into my final thing. Oh, yes. So now you're building this in Buffalo, and you have a few other companies that you're working with, correct? That are helping, like, are teaming up with Gratwick.
Yeah, we've got a lot of support in the community there. So like, there's some cool augmented reality stuff that we're doing right now, just to start getting a couple different products and services out there. So there's a couple local companies. One of them's Twisted Rope, that's actually located in Buffalo and out here in Los Angeles. That's like right on the cutting edge of AR and all sorts of augmented reality content and creation. But a big part of pulling off their augmented reality stuff is the effects and the animation. And we've got another strategic partnership with a company called Rebel One Studios that does like Pixar level animation and 3D
Oh,
animation and
nice.
all of that stuff. So the two of them combined is some really cool, powerful stuff. We actually had a Bills Mafia shirt created. That's all caricatures of all the famous members of the Bills Mafia charging forward. And once the company reaches its first round of fundraise, that shirt's going to be augmented and animated. So when you point your phone at it, you'll see all the characters charging towards you and the big mob charging forward, and it'll be like an opening graphic, and then it'll go into a montage of fan submitted videos each week, and we can upload and change that video out from the back end. So each week when somebody points their phone at the shirt, they're going to see a different like team cheer
Really?
video of all the different fans rooting on the team from the previous week. Yeah, so that's kind of our thank you gift to the community for investing in Gratwick and helping get us going. We're making this Bills Mafia T-shirt with some of the different companies that we're working with.
That's really cool. It took me a second to have the light bulb click that you're like you point your phone at the shirt and it becomes live on your phone and it changes. That's pretty sweet. I'm not even a Bills fan, but I'd probably get that shirt just for
Oh, the technology is amazing. One of the other things we
yeah.
made, just playing around, it was like an idea I came up with, and I just wanted to see if it would work, is an augmented reality sports card. So I made one of Michael Jordan. So the front of it looks like a Michael Jordan basketball card. The back of it has his career stats, and it's got a picture of him at the podium for his Hall of Fame speech. So you hold your phone up to the front of it, and the still image on the front of the basketball card is Jordan dribbling the ball in the play that was against the Utah Jazz to win his final championship. So
Okay.
when you point your phone at it, that play comes to life. He finishes out the dribble, shoots the basket, hits the bucket. You hear Marv Alberts calling the final end there, and he wins the championship. And then the card freezes with him doing his shot. And then you flip it
Nice.
over to the back and you look at it through the phone, and his Hall of Fame speech comes to life, and there he is at the podium giving his Hall of Fame speech, and you can listen to the whole speech.
That's like something that you see in sci-fi movies, my friend. You're like you
Oh,
just are
it's coming.
making sci-fi movies come to life.
But what's gonna revitalize the card industry is this next generation, these augmented reality cards.
Yeah, that's amazing right there. I want one of those.
Oh, there's many
Uh,
layers to Gratwick.
right on, man. Right on. So there is a lot that you guys have going on there. I can't wait to see what happens with Gratwick. I like the philosophy of Gratwick in a way where it's kind of like kind of giving the power to the people and getting the big like corporation Hollywood execs out of it.
Oh yeah, that's why it's built
Like
by artists, man. We just want the tools. We don't need the suits.
yes, exactly. And is there like the name Gratwick? Does that have any meaning to it, or is
It, it,
it like a
it
combination of two words?
No, it
Or
actually does have a meaning. So in my hometown that I grew up in, it's actually a suburb of Buffalo called North Tonawanda, and there's a little borough in North Tonawanda called Gratwick, Gratwick Park, Gratwick Neighborhood, Gratwick Fire Hall, and that was kind of where like all my friends were growing up and where they all lived. We played football all the time. We just like that was our family. So Gratwick was always kind of synonymous in our group for family, and when we decided to start a company and needed a name, there was never a second choice.
Okay, fair enough, man. Name it after home.
Yep, yep.
Um, nice, nice. All right, so now for the people who are looking to get into the industry, whether like you seem to cover a lot of it, so I'll just keep it wide open to you. What is some advice that you have for somebody either looking to get into the film or entertainment industry or take that next step?
The biggest thing I learned early on is if you're waiting to be picked by somebody else, you can be waiting a long, long time. So the sooner you put yourself in a position to be doing the picking, the better off you are. So Craigslist is where what taught me that right away. No matter how good I am, no matter how talented I am, no matter how great my scripts are, if I'm one of a thousand other people that are submitting, my odds of getting picked are pretty slim because there's probably going to be other people that are really good as well. So it's first of all you got to be noticed, and then you have to be that one that they choose. That's that's not you're not controlling your destiny when you're doing it that way and hoping somebody
Okay.
else says yes. Same with going to Hollywood. And I really want to be a filmmaker someday. You constantly need somebody else to write you a check. Your entire life is on hold waiting for somebody else to write a big fat check that says yes, you can make your movie. And I just didn't want to live life that way. I'd rather take that same period of time but control my own destiny and be the person that can say yes to myself than do it that way. So the strongest advice I can give to anyone is do whatever you have to control your own destiny and be able to authorize and greenlight your own ideas.
Nice, nice. Put yourself in the boss position in a way. Create your own content
Be your own
and
mogul.
be your own mogul. I like that. I like that. That may be the name of this episode right there. Be your own mogul. So all right, cool. That's some great advice right there. Now you're having to do a lot of this right now, but what are you doing currently to promote yourself and or Gratwick?
The honest answer is I'm terrible at self promotions because there's a little too much altruist in me. So I feel like the message should stand for itself. And I hate treating people like they're a marketing campaign or trying to dumb things down to the lowest common denominator or creating clickbait. So I don't do nearly enough promotions and marketing as we probably should. So I'm terrible to give you an answer. What I do couple tweets a day, not nearly enough. Um, I hate doing like the little videos where you're talking to the camera and you're just
Instagram Live or whatever,
yeah,
Facebook
oh, dude,
Live.
I'm terrible with inanimate objects. Like if I'm behind the camera and I wrote the script, I can remember every single syllable in that script, and I can be on the actor's ass if they miss a single word. But that same line of dialogue that I know by heart, you point that camera at me, my mind goes blank, and I can't remember a word of it. Um, yeah, so my advice on self promotions would be to do more than I'm doing and figure out a way to get it done, which is exactly what our top priority is right now. Bringing on some volunteers and that from Buffalo that are going to help step up our game.
Yeah. Now you say you don't like doing it because you don't want to create like clickbait stuff like that. Is that because you like I've come across this a lot in the artistic type, including myself, where it almost feels
Inauthentic.
like inauthentic or like you're bothering people when you continue to promote yourself. You're like, I want people to see my stuff, but I don't want to be like salesy to people. I
Yeah,
want them to find it organically, but you have to like a lot of times I heard you have to learn to go out there and be like, yes, check out my show. Here you go. Not quite like the people on the Vegas Strip handing out the cards, but
the flat.
yeah.
See, the thing for me is the inauthenticity of it. That I'm self aware enough to know that if I'm promoting my shit, of course I'm going to say it's good. Like internally,
Yeah.
I know that not everything I make is great, and I know that I'm honest enough with myself to say this sucks, even if I did create it. But the person I'm talking to doesn't know that I'm that brutally honest with myself. So me promoting myself is the same as any other asshole saying, "Look at me, look at me, look at me." And Gratwick is it should not be about me. And my content, I want to be good enough that it's about that. If nobody ever knew I existed, and Gratwick was built to do what it's supposed to do, and all these things, that would be my ideal scenario. I don't know. I come from a team sports background. I know that when the team succeeds, the individuals get attention and success from that. So it just, to try to put myself out there in front of anything else doesn't sit right with me from any angle. So no matter how I try to dumb it down, no matter how I try to do it because I know it needs to be done, I just don't connect with it because it's not the right format for how I feel about talking about this stuff.
Fair enough, man. You have to be comfortable doing it too. But, um, yeah. So promotion can be tricky, and if you're not good at it, you should do what you're doing, getting somebody else to do it for you.
Working on it. We're working on it. We've got some awesome volunteers that are all doing their best, but we're at that stage right now where it's literally word of mouth. One person becomes two people become four. We're holding a town hall December 11th in Buffalo just to have some people come out, talk to them face to face, tell them what we're doing. It's a lot like running a political campaign right now, except stage one is we've got to raise enough seed money that we can start rolling that into advertising, and we can actually start running ads where we're reaching more than one person at a time. But until that happens, it's just, hey, I'm talking to Aaron, I'm telling you what we're doing, and I hope you like what we're doing. And then tomorrow I'm going to talk to Bob, hopefully.
Yeah, so Bob, he has a good podcast. Bob does. I listen to Bob's podcast all the time. But yeah, so you mentioned you want to reach a tier. Like, what is your goal as far as reaching financially?
Me personally, there's two levels to that. For me to be happy, I just want enough to tell my own stories on my terms. For me to be the person that I think I'm capable of, I want to generate enough revenue and resources to finance the movement that I think needs to take place. I think there's a lot of things in this world that don't get done because they're not going to make any money or because they don't serve a political agenda. I'd like to see those things come to fruition for myself, just like the studio. Perfect example is that, have you ever heard of the Venus Project?
Venus. It sounds familiar for some reason, but it's one of the planets. So,
the Venus Project was started by this guy Jacques Fresco or something. I'm butchering his name, but basically since the 70s, this guy's been preaching that we could new models for building cities that are all self-sustainable using existing technologies to create a city that is designed to be as efficient as possible, that communicates with other cities to share resources, offers all sorts of vertical integration and automated transportation, things like crop silos that are just glass silos with hydroponics in them and all of that type of stuff, so they take up less of a footprint. There's no pesticides in these types of things. All like an entire city designed to be efficient and zero point from the ground up. And there's no money in a city like that existing. So somebody's going to have to make a whole bunch of money that doesn't mind blowing it on something like that. And I'd love to just see one. So that's kind of my goal for having a platform, having an audience, and reaching beyond the artistic stage, is to ideally bring forth some of these energy efficient future technologies that have been hidden for so long. And some of this stuff seeps into my art. So a lot of my creative content all has an underlying theme of extreme social accountability.
Be interesting. So, like, what's an example of like the extreme social accountability? I can't let you say that without having an example in my head.
So I've got all right. So the next movie I want to make is called Just Drive. Okay. And it's a story about a Hollywood whistleblower that escapes an attempt on his life and slips out of LA in the middle of the night. He was a former A-lister that used his access and disenfranchisement with once he made it to success and fame to kind of expose a lot of things everybody's finally talking about in Hollywood. When I wrote this script, nobody wanted to talk about this stuff, but he basically blows the whistle on all of this, escapes in the middle of the night, and now the entire world's hunting him, including the deep state, the press, the media, the public, and he's holed up in this back of this limousine in the Midwest as all of this stuff unfolds, and the entire movie plays out in the back of that limousine like a 21st century OJ chase. But instead of following through the media's eyes, you're actually in the back seat with the character as all of these dynamics and everything kind of play out. He is the extreme social justice in that scenario, and extreme social justice plays out on him in that scenario. And then, just as a second example, I have, and I'm going to try and walk a tightrope here to tell this without ruining the story.
Okay, fair enough. If you do say something, let me know. I'll bleep out if you give
Nah,
away the ending.
nah, I'm not too anti spoilers, because I feel like the people that listen to spoilers, it just makes them want to see something even more, and then the people that don't, they don't bother anyway. So I've got a horror film that it's basically kind of Scream on a highway, about the traditional five characters, except there's a spin on each one of them, and they break down on the side of an elevated twin span highway in the middle of Louisiana. So there's nothing but swamps and gators underneath them, and there's no exits for miles and miles in either direction. So they're forced to use the call box, even though it's the 21st century. They're still stuck using that dirty ass call box, and
Okay.
eventually a killer hunts them down on over the course of the night on this stretch of elevated highway, and they've got nowhere to run. But the backstory behind the whole thing is the governor's daughter is one of these people that's on the highway, and the governor forced through this entire superhighway that was built through the bayou and created a whole lot of ecological damage and spillover that created the motivation for why this killer is exacting his revenge on this specific highway that was built on corruption and ecological disasters.
Cool, man. I was trying to when I hear horror movies and stuff like that, I try to put myself in the situation so I can try to get the feel of it.
That script was inspired by us driving around the country when we promoted our first movie, and long roads between cities. You're just sitting there with your head on the window, and I'm just watching the call boxes fly by, and I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, in the age of cell phones, the amount of shit that would have to go wrong for you to actually have to go and use one of these dirty, ratty ass call boxes. And then it just kind of spiraled from there, because shortly after that, we were driving on that twin span highway over the bayou, and I'm like, dude, if you broke down here, there's nowhere to go. Boom.
I could see in some stretches in Louisiana with the swampland and no cell service in those areas, that you may need to use that call box if or become gator bait.
It's ripe for a horror movie.
Yeah. So that right. So those are some good examples of social justice. I just had to get a feel in my head for what you meant by that and how it worked into your film. Now, what would be a highlight and a low light that you care to share?
Can they be the same moment?
Yes, they can be in the same situation.
All right, so just for the uniqueness of it, I'm going to give the same moment as the highlight and the low light.
All right, could be a first.
After we finished The Perfect House, and we turned our back on Hollywood because they wanted us to sell out all of our family and friends and give Lionsgate our movie for free, we made a deal for our movie to be the first film ever to release on Facebook. And with no agent, no history, no experience, no clue what the hell I was doing in the entertainment industry, we got our film on the front page of Variety magazine. And I thought for sure, agents were gonna, who the fuck is, I don't know if we can swear or not, but who the hell?
You can go ahead.
Who the fuck is this guy, and why the hell is this little horror movie on the front page of Variety? Somebody talk to this guy and find out if he's represented. No, nobody gave a shit. So we ended up doing a cross-country road trip around the country to promote it as the first film that ever released on Facebook. This little 1972 Dodge RV that got 5.5 miles per gallon, and we painted it completely black with no air conditioning, and drove around the country from city to city doing pop-up screenings with a movie projector, collecting gas money donations. We did strip clubs, hilltops, bars, backyards, basements. Anyone that would let us throw up a screen and put the movie on, we did it. Covered 12,000 miles all the way around the country. Made it back to Buffalo for this big countdown to midnight party on October 1st, 2011. Movie's going to release on Facebook. Every time somebody watches it, it's going to share on their page before and after they watch the movie. The transactions will be done through PayPal, so you'll immediately have your money in your account at the point of sales. 10 years ago. This is shit the industry still hasn't figured out how to do. And celebrate this big party. Huge accomplishment. Super proud of ourselves for pulling it off. And that was the exact moment Facebook switched over to the timeline, and it created a bug in the coding. And it took them 2 weeks to figure out that over 3,500 people the opening weekend tried to watch the movie, and none of them were able to click the pay button because the bug in the system wasn't taking them from an HTTP browser to an HTTPS browser so they could go to PayPal, pay for it, and come back. And,
oh man, that's rough.
Yeah, and after 2 weeks, when they finally figured it out, they fixed it in 2 seconds, but all the traffic was gone. We were dead in the water. We had no money for advertising. The whole thing fell on its face, and had it worked, it would have went viral, and we would have been self-financed freaking 8 years ago. But it inspired the model and the learning experience, the trial and error, and the curves of everything that's come forward that we've built this entire studio upon. And if we didn't go around the country meeting people one-on-one, shaking hands, talking to them about what we were doing on Facebook, and realizing that if you just put yourself out there and you take a leap of faith and you actually are doing it for the right reasons, that there's a shitload of people around this country that will have your back and will support you, none of this stuff would have ever happened. So here we are all these years later, basically doing the same thing again, except instead of physically going around the country, we're doing it digitally.
Okay, yeah. Did you ever make a voodoo doll of Mark Zuckerberg after that?
Oh man, he was. I'd have had a whole wall of voodoo dolls if we started digging into all the people that dropped the ball on the back end of. But like, dude, when hindsight becomes 2020 and you've got all this time and distance, if we didn't get screwed over by so many different people, if the industry didn't try to prey on us, if they didn't fuck me over right out of the gate, we would have been lost into the system so many different ways, and none of this stuff would have ever happened. It's
very true.
Me and my girlfriend have been together 10 years through this entire process and are partners with us. We joke all the time. We were ready to go through hell for this life in the entertainment industry. We just didn't expect all the return trips. And it really just becomes, it all happens for a reason. You just need enough distance to see why.
I like that statement right there. It's very, very true. You need distance to see from the event to see why you keep going through it. So
everybody wants to go from rags to riches, but nobody wants to actually live the rags. They just want that to be the backstory.
Yeah, I hear you. There's so much money in podcasting right now that I'm making,
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see how that would be a highlight and a low light in the same story. The highlight is you got to go around, meet everybody, talk to everybody. Then you had so many people. Was it 35,000 people?
3,500 tried to watch it in the first 48 hours, which would have been more than enough to start rolling that into online ads and spiraling it out from there. Each person, it would have shared to their Facebook friends. That's all we needed, was to show that it could work, and that would have given us leverage and distribution negotiations and everything else. It just needed to be anything but a total flop.
Yeah, damn, change into the feed. Oh man, that's rough right there.
The odds of that happening exactly when we release that are so finite and so small that the only way to rationalize it is that everything happens for a reason.
Like the hand of God came down and it was like, Facebook, you're gonna glitch.
This has got to put you on the right path. But the weird thing is, that's how that entire film came together, with so many things that were in our darkest hours, and things just fell into place to make it happen. My entire ending up in LA as a filmmaker was life forcing me down a path. I never thought of it. Never came out here to pursue Hollywood. I was just running away from the snow. I was always a storyteller, but it never meant shit in Buffalo. I came here and the light finally went off, and I figured out what my purpose was supposed to be in life. But like,
I'm from the Midwest, so I understand the running away from the snow thing.
Yeah, oh, dude, it's so weird how I'm where I feel like I was always supposed to be, but I most certainly did not take the direct path to get here.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the nice things about here too, like even up in the Bay Area where I'm at right now, in the winter it gets cold enough at night, okay? But, in the winter here things bloom, like plants bloom in the winter. It's actually there's more flowers and stuff in the winter than there is in the summer. Back in the Midwest and East Coast, everything is
Dead.
dead
You got
and
them
cold
suicide
and
skies for
frozen.
6 months, just a solid gray sky.
Yeah, it's at least it's not Alaska where it's like pitch black for like 60 days or something like that. But, it's still everything's dark and gray and cloudy and gloomy and no greenes except for evergreens. But,
Yeah.
it's a big difference. The whole seasonal depression thing. But that's a whole nother story.
As Daniel Tosh said in one of his acts, I love seasons too. That's why I live in a place that skips the shitty ones.
Yes. Yes, definitely. That's a smart way to do it. But anyway, enough about the weather and the cold. My sympathy goes out to everybody who's stuck back where there's actual winter. Hopefully your heater works and all that stuff. I was glad I wasn't back home last winter with negative
Oh,
58 or something like that. It was
dude,
ridiculous.
it was like 2 or 3 years ago. It was a social media viral sensation, but Buffalo got hit with 7 feet of snow in less than 24 hours. It was up to people's roofs. The amount
Yeah.
of people on my timelines that I saw with their front door open and a wall of snow with their beers stuck in it was nuts.
With their beer stuck in it. Yes. Man, what probably had to be one of those nor'easters.
Oh, it was a freak storm. But the crazy part was 48 hours later, it was all gone and there was flooding everywhere.
So you got hit twice by it, pretty
Yeah, no,
much.
no such thing as climate change, though.
No, 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 not at all. Not at all. All right. So now I got just a couple more questions for you here. Then I'll let you get on about your evening, Kris. What do you want people to remember or take away from Gratwick films? Like, I'm trying to figure out how to relate this question exactly, but when people hear of Gratwick opposed to like 20th Century Fox or, Warner Brothers or something, how do you want them to think of you different than them? I guess that'd be a good way to put it. Or different than Hollywood in general.
I guess I'd like to. I guess how I would want to be seen is I'd want the artist to see me as a partner
Okay.
in what they're doing, and what Gratwick is to them is a partner that wants to help them facilitate their vision versus a machine that wants to serve its own agenda and use the artist as a cog in that wheel. We simply want to be creative partners with the artist and executing what they want it to be. I have a phrase that I've been rolling with, and I call it kind of the Kanye West generation of artists, where their obligation and their commitment to the product that they create doesn't begin and end with production. They care about how it's packaged and sold to the audience. They care about how it connects and how it's marketed. How many movies have bombed because the marketing company took over and they created a sexy trailer that sold a movie that wasn't the movie you saw in the theaters, but they didn't care because they just wanted to have opening weekend numbers that they could use and rely on. After that, after the jig was up, they already knew the movie sucked. They just wanted their opening weekend numbers, and they manipulated the audience, and the audience left disappointed. How many actors and filmmakers' careers have been burned by that tactic because the people that would have connected with that movie and that piece of content weren't sold or marketed to properly, so they knew about it and went to it, and instead an incorrect audience went there and left disappointed.
Yeah, yeah, like one of those that think like it's actually a good movie, but it was like kind of marketed wrong. Going back to Jim Carrey's first serious role, The Truman
Cable
Show.
box?
I was
Oh,
thinking
or
Truman
Cable Guy?
Show.
Oh, that one too.
The
Yeah,
cable guy was still funny, but it was kind of dark.
that was definitely
But
not what people were expecting when they were
no,
going into
no.
it.
No, but like even more so, like the Truman Show, people
Yeah,
expected like the physical comedy of Jim Carrey. At least in
talk
Cable
about
Guy, you
before its
had
time,
that.
dude. The Truman Show
But
is so far ahead of its time.
Yeah, but then you look at it and watch it, and it's like as not looking at Jim Carrey as a comedic actor, like looking at him as an actor, and he actually does a really good job,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But if you're expecting to laugh your ass off, you're gonna leave that,
Hmm.
leave it disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely. But the biggest thing for me beyond just Gratwick as a company, but as me as somebody in the entertainment industry and my personal brand is I want to be remembered for integrity and accountability, self accountability for the commitments and the things we're talking about doing and actually following through on them, but also raising the bar back up to a level where other people have to compete with us, and in order to do so, they have to match our accountability and our integrity. Because if it gets out around Hollywood that there's a studio system that will support your creative vision and they're not going to try and rape you financially or physically, people are going to come running and flocking to that. So you want to compete against that type of support, you're going to have to offer the same level of commitment and promises. So instead of a race to the bottom that Harvey Weinstein started, ironically also
Yeah.
from Buffalo, we can bring this shit full circle, and somebody from Buffalo can help lead the charge to clean this shit up and start a new race to the top again.
Right. Yeah, it's sad that you actually had to throw in the physically part,
Mm.
but yeah, the whole Weinstein thing and all that. But that it is a I didn't know he was from Buffalo, but yeah,
Oh,
so that has
dude.
a little poetic justice to it, like with him being from Buffalo and then you coming from Buffalo and trying to,
it,
clean
it,
up the
it,
pieces.
it kills me that he was the one to do all this, and that's where he came from. He started doing concerts and event promotions in Buffalo, and he was the same predatory bully in the 70s and 80s when he was coming up in Buffalo that he was everywhere else. And if anyone back then had stood up to him, exposed him, shut that shit down, and killed it in the cradle, and it didn't work for him, then he would have never rose to the powers and the things that he did. But because everywhere
Yeah.
he went, from Buffalo to New York City to L.A., that type of conduct got him nothing but results. It reinforced the behavior.
Yeah, yeah. If it would nipped it in the bud early, that would have been it, man. Um, Now that's kind of a dark note to end, like to start wrapping things up on. But I do have one more question for you, which will bring things back around here. But before we get to that, how can people get a hold of you? How can people support Gratwick and actually invest in Gratwick and be a part of that community?
GratwickProductions.com will take you right to the Start Engine page. It'll give you the entire offering where you can invest in the company. We're doing weekly updates where we're doing deep dives into some of the different components of this, the blockchain distribution platform, the cryptocurrency elements, the esports parts of all of this, the studio facility. All these there's so much here to unpack that each week we keep doing different updates that give more detailed information on it, and all of that's happening on, like I said, gratwickproductions.com, which takes you right to the Start Engine page. Twitter, Twitter and Facebook are Gratwick Prod Inc. GratwickProdinc, and then Instagram is Gratwick Productions.
All right, perfect. I will put those in the show notes so people can find them. And also, if you're interested, you can invest in Gratwick and become part of the community.
Yep.
So, um, yeah, it'd be very cool. Check it out. I'm going to check it out a little bit more myself. I've had a great time talking to you tonight, and Gratwick sounds like an awesome thing, and I wish you nothing but the best. And if I can help promote in any way, let me know. I'd be happy to lend a hand to you. And I have that one final question for you, Kris.
Oh, hit me.
Kris Hulbert, how do you live uncontained?
Oh, that's an easy one. I removed all safety nets long time ago. There's no backup plans. There's no alternatives. There's no other options. And if you rack up a whole lot of collateral damage, you have to keep pushing forward and seeing it through to the end. In other words, it was all for nothing. So my biggest advice to anyone is remove the safety nets. If that's a fallback job, if that's moving back home, if that's money in the bank, whatever it is that gives you an option to quit on yourself, it eventually you're going to cash it in.
Ooh, All right, I actually like that. I like that. So, and you mentioned you've been to hell and back a few times trying to chase after this. So,
When going through hell again is the only way forward, you've got no choice, man. Like I said, if there was an off ramp anywhere along the way, I probably would have took it several times over. But at every turn, my girlfriend Andrea has been by my side every step of the way, but she has not gone happily through each phase. And the only reason we're still together and we still keep going is because we removed all safety nets, man. This is the only way to make things right. This is the only way to see it through to the end, and this is the only way to make all the sacrifices we've gone through have any sort of meaning and purpose. And there's 10 years we've been fighting this battle against Hollywood now. That's a lot of family and friends back home I've watched get old. That's a lot of birthdays, weddings, funerals. The things that we've missed are things that you can't get back no matter what happens. And it has to mean something. And the only way for it to mean something is to see this journey through to the end.
I like that, man. I like that. I heard a saying once. I don't know who it was by. It was, well, Chris Hardwick, I think, was quoting somebody, but I don't know who he was quoting. It was, if you're driving through hell, or if you find yourself driving through hell, keep going. Because, it might be longer to turn around and go back the other way, and you're still driving through hell.
Yeah. There's a meme that sits in my head all the time that like when like it's a meme, but it's been around longer than memes. It used to be like a motivational poster in like offices and that.
Yeah.
And it's a guy with a pickaxe and he's underground and he's trying to go back and forth with the pickaxe and he turns and quits when he's like one more swing of the pickaxe away from his goal on there.
Yeah.
And it's something like, don't quit. You never know how close you are to the finish line. And like
exactly.
Dude, no shit. Like for the 8 years we've been following this, we thought we were at we made it finish line. Like, oh, that's tomorrow. Oh, boy, that's like a month away. Oh, that's like a week away. For 8 years, we thought we're one more day away from the finish line, and can't quit now. It could be tomorrow.
Yeah, keep swinging that pickaxe, my friend. Keep swinging that pickaxe.
Yep.
All right, I have one final thing for you to do, Chris, and that is sign off the show. Will you do me the honor of signing off the show tonight?
Oh, absolutely. I encourage everybody to remove all safety nets, and I'm Kris Hulbert, CEO of Gratwick Films and a goddamn filmmaker, because that's how I live uncontained.
And that does it for another episode of Uncontained. Thank you for listening, and thanks again to Kris Hulbert for coming on the show and talking about Gratwick Films. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he gets going there. And once again, if you want to invest in Gratwick Films, it could be really cool. Get to be that owner/audience member who has some input over what's going on with the auditions and casting, and get to find out casting opportunities before anybody else. So I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't tell you to buy it. It is regulated by the SEC, so it's legit. And you can find out more information at gratwickproductions.com. The link will be in the show notes, so make sure you check those out. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, live uncontained.